Tonight on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are joined by our guy, Kent Swanson from the KC Sports Network. But first, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, I don't know about you. I needed the bye week. I needed a little bit of time. Tell me, what do you think the Bills should do about Von Miller?
Oh, come on, man. So I also wanted a bye week, and then immediately was I just want to talk about the Bills playing football. Yeah. That's just all I want. The bye week. Yeah. And not even just because of the news, but even with as much abuse as we have taken from this team this year in fourth quarters and high heart rates on my iWatch. And as mad as I have been at them and as mad as I was going into that bye week, 3 days into it, I was kind of like, I'm not going to get to watch the Bills play this weekend. Yeah. I'm still a glutton for punishment. I still love watching Bills football more than anything. So Von Miller aside, I am really looking forward to talking football and getting back into the groove of talking matchups, especially this one. This is a huge one, man.
Yeah. So, obviously, we've had him on before. You guys know him, and we are always huge fans of everything going on at the KC Sports Network. It's something that we couldn't be prouder of seeing an independent, media company come up and get the recognition and the following that they've gotten along with the Chiefs' success here. It's something that we're very, very proud of to be, friends with the guys there and trying to do what we're trying to do in Buffalo and seeing them succeed so much in Kansas City. And no one more responsible for that than our guy, Kent Swanson. Kent, welcome aboard. How we doing, brother?
Man, I am always excited to talk to you guys. I like that the Chiefs and the Bills play each other on the schedule because it's always an excuse for us to get together. And everything you just said, thank you. But also, I think you guys all know, and I hope everyone knows, how much we love you guys over at Cover One and how lucky Bills fans are to have what you guys are doing as well. So it's always fun to get together with you guys.
Very kind. We appreciate it. And I wish we had just been recording and a lot of the stuff we talked about pre-show. We had some really good discussions, and let's open up there just before we get into matchups and who's practice squad or whose injury reports back into what. It's really weird that both teams are having very, very similarly odd seasons, some weird disappointments, some weird letdowns, but a lot of underlying metrics telling you that, hey, these are still two really good teams. Just the Bills have been slightly more disappointing or had a couple additional shots in the foot. You guys have only shot yourself in the right foot. We've shot ourselves in both the right and the left foot. How are teams handling it? How are the fans handling it in KC? How is it going down in, again, we talked pre-show, we would feel like, hey, it's got to still be pretty appreciative and understandable that you guys have, multiple titles and hosting the AFC Championship game all the time. You're going to have Pat next year and going forward. It's no big deal. Is it that simple, or is there a little more anxiety than what we realize around KC?
Yeah, there's more anxiety, and it's short memory / I think there's I'm not trying to be this isn't me bragging, but having two recent Super Bowls being on this side of it, that desire for one never goes away. And, there's not it's not that there's a honeymoon period, but because there's still if they don't win it, no one's going to be up in arms and trying to change everything drastically, but also acknowledging things you only get so many years of Mahomes, you only get so many years of Andy, and there's legacies to try to chase. Mahomes is trying to chase Tom, and so I think anytime you watch a season the way that we've kind of seen it unfold for the Chiefs, where they're struggling offensively, in such a drastically bad way. And like, I don't think the underlying metrics look as great for them offensively as like maybe some of the underlying metrics for the, the Bills do either. Right. But yeah, I think, there's some anxiety because I think specifically because a lot of people were talking about like what is ailing them right now. They saw a lot of it, kind of coming. And so like, I think that's adding a layer of frustration. If the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's not going to be, insane or anything. But I think, there's still some level of anxiety to it.
But how do you like put that with that? It's part of the lens at which which we as fans view the Chiefs is in recent years in all these graphics that come out on Monday. They're so far up in the top left corner or whatever it is, top right corner, doing all the right things and at a juggernaut level, right? Especially on the offensive side of the ball. And even though like we say maybe they shot themselves in the foot, just like the Bills, we were talking offline. For the Bills, it's the difference of maybe 5 plays you can pick out throughout the season. And we're right there neck and neck with the Chiefs. And this is a big matchup for potential big things for placement and seeding in the playoffs. But right now, the Bills are hanging on, right? But they're both good teams. And so they both are being judged by going from great juggernaut. Like we haven't seen offenses produce like this with EPAs now back a little bit to, okay, they're top 10. Like, and now of as if, the Bills are here firing coaches, not saying Dorsey didn't deserve it, but how do you guys parse that of like, okay, but we're still a good team. And if we just punch the ticket, that's all you need. It doesn't have to be AFC championship games coming through Casey year in and year out.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely like, just because of what this team has done, it's set some unrealistic expectations, but I think there's also a layer of it to like, I think Chiefs fans have seen what a Super Bowl team looks like, right? And so they've seen versions of this team and they know what the smell, what the feel like is. And this one doesn't feel like it has in any year of Mahomes' career outside of his rookie year when it was drastically great offense, terrible defense.
Right.
And so I think that's where things I think it's difficult for fans to kind of navigate how different this team is, how different this team feels. Not that they can't do it. And it's just that it looks a lot harder and a lot different than Chiefs fans are used to. And that's where I think there's tension, there's some of that kind of stuff.
Can I follow up on that real quick and steal one from you, Greg? It's since you know what it looks like in recent, in this era, building a Super Bowl team looks like, my question then to you as just a general football fan would be, do you see any teams this year that have that? Because that's where I'm at. If the Bills can punch a ticket, is there anyone that feels like you can't get through them if you get in?
No, like I don't know if there's like, I don't think there's any team that has that. Like, I don't trust the Eagles. Right. Niners.
The healthy Niners team is the only buzzsaw I've seen. They lost those 3 in a row when they didn't have Kittle and Debo and nicked up McCaffrey. When their weapons have been healthy, they're 9-0.
They look at
and have
in the AFC
just boat raced everybody. I don't think there's anybody else. KC is really good. Baltimore is really good. Dallas is really good. Philly is real good. None of them are unbeatable. Miami is really good. Like, they're all really good, and any of those teams can get hot for 4 games and not only go to the Super Bowl but win it.
Mm-hmm.
If San Francisco is healthy, I think they're the only ones who separated themselves.
That look like a champion right now.
It's going to take something special to knock that off, or just like every other team, you asked Cincinnati before Burrow went down. All it takes is one of those guys being hurt, and we saw not only are they flawed and mortal, they're very beatable. They lost 3 in a row to some pretty bad teams. Yeah. So it takes them being perfect to then be the buzzsaw they are, but it's fragile.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're one good game plan against Brock Purdy from beating the Niners too, though. Like, and I think that's the thing. It's like, Spags would have some stuff for him if they ever lined up, and like, I still just don't trust Brock Purdy enough to say like, like that's still like, I know he's playing good football, but like, I think there's a level to some other quarterbacks playing. I don't understand the MVP hype, all that stuff. So,
well, and in that case too, then you have to also, to take this too far off the rails, but that's where as a Chiefs fan, I'd feel good in the experience, right? Because Purdy also, can he win those big games? Can Shanahan win those big games, right? We know Reid and Mahomes can. And so taking that experience into a playoffs in a year where there aren't, I feel like every year there's a Niners and then somebody from the AFC, a Chiefs or whatever, that is like, okay, it's going to take a pretty big effort to go and beat that. But right now, I don't see that.
Well, and like, you're right. And I think that this year's also different. Like, we're talking about all these teams that are good, but maybe not great. And it's partially because we've spent the last few years talking about our two teams. Yeah. And we've talked, about the Bengals, I guess, they
were,
I don't want to talk about the Bengals. We don't want to do that. I will say, like, there's like, I love y'all and I actually love Bills Mafia. I have this weird thing with the Bengals that I can't do it with them the same way I can do it with you guys. I'm sorry. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't exist with me.
It's weird. I've always felt the same. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a handful of individual people I don't love around KC, but in general, I've always like this fan bases were super, super similar. They went forever, but never lost the passion, and never continued to support loudest crowd ever with 50 years between Super Bowl championships. There's always a ton of respect for it there. My weird one, just as random aside, is Tennessee. I can't really explain it. I just hate Tennessee fans. I can't explain it. But it's obnoxious and terrible all the time, constantly negative experience. And even people I don't, of course I kind of hate the Dolphins and the division stuff, but the Jets are like that for me. Like, I don't have a ton of hatred for the Jets. Like, I'm just like, oh man, I'm sorry.
I hate New England. I have so many close people that like New England. And they're all front runners, right? They're just watching Celtics games now. They're not even watching.
All right. So let's bring it. Let's bring it back in here. So, as Aaron brought up earlier, and I thought you talked really well, Doug, it's a really thin line between expectation and entitlement. It's a really thin line between excitement versus are you really disappointed? Or is it just like, hey, the bar was so high? I also think with this Bills team, there's an element of, like you brought up some of the confusion you had. Aaron and I have now started probably 4 different post-game shows of we got no idea. I can't explain it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that is nobody wants to host the Buffalo Bills as the 7th seed. Nobody wants to be like, hey, congratulations on your great season. You're the number 2 seed in the AFC. Here's Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills coming to your team. So I would say this game matters more for Buffalo, but KC has the opportunity of, hey, you could kind of end this. You could kind of stop this from getting any momentum of coming back and closing on a hot run for a team that shucks, you guys don't probably deserve to be out of the playoffs, but okay, we'll see you next year. Mm-hmm. How is the team approaching that, of looking at them as what they could be, not what the 6-6 record says they are? Hey, this is a worse team than the Colts.
I mean, I think everyone, I do not want to run into Buffalo in the playoffs at all. I mean, I don't want to see Buffalo in the playoffs. I'm terrified. I am a staunch believer in the team with the 4th best, margin of victory or whatever. What is it called? Your plus 100
point differential.
Point differential. I lost my words for a second there. I don't want to run into that team. Like, the ceiling is still it's still that ceiling that's terrifying. And I think the Chiefs are definitely looking at this game the same way. It feels like a pivotal moment for both teams. The Chiefs just lost a game that they probably shouldn't have. Well, actually, maybe they should have this year. They're losing games that they normally don't lose. They've lost several games they normally don't lose. They're playing a different version of football. They're making mistakes that they shouldn't be making in December, that they usually don't make in December. And we're sitting here, they're a game out. Yes, they have all the tiebreakers with all the teams ahead of them in the AFC standings. So if they win out and these other teams in front of them drop one, they're going to be the 1 seed. But it has to start with beating Buffalo, right? And that's a big game. And I'm not excited to see Buffalo out of a bye at a very pivotal moment for the Chiefs too. It's a turning moment for both teams, because Bills probably have to win this game to really give themselves a great shot at the 7. And
they're not technically mathematically eliminated, but for all intents and purposes, this is a must win.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs can drop 2 games back, for the chase for the 1 seed. So like there's a lot riding on this game, and man, 8-5 will be a very tough pill for I think Chiefs fans to swallow if that happens too.
Well, let's get into sort of how we are going to approach this and take a look at this matchup here. I'm going to start on my side of the ball. I'm looking at the Kansas City offense this year. We talked a little bit about that here, of it not looking like the juggernaut it once has, right? But it's still a good offense. And there's some splits that show, I think, Pro Ant Anthony Prohaska, who does disguise coverage here, showed some of the splits in first and second quarter versus third and fourth quarter. And I know I didn't look into that in scouting. Is that those types of splits and the things that we're seeing EPA wise and efficiency wise, is that more a sign that they still did have, even while there's been weird losses and some close losses, they've had some blowouts still and going into second halves with the lead at different times throughout this season? Is some of it that, or is it just lack of adjustment in the second half in general here for the season?
The farther they get away from the first 15 script, the worse it's been. It's not a product of how the game flow. They've just candidly, they haven't been able to sustain offense for 4 quarters. People are figuring them out a lot quicker, and it's because they're simplifying their scheme a lot, and they're trying to hit the screen game harder. They're trying to get some of these guys actively involved, that maybe they can't get involved the same way that they've been able to within the structure of the offense. Like, this is a notoriously difficult offense for wide receivers to adjust to.
Same. Yeah.
And there's a rookie receiver learning curve joke that's been around in Kansas City forever. And it's, it takes them forever. And, you're going to learn XYZ, you're going to learn all of it. And you're going to have to, understand all these coverage adjustments that you're going to have to make to your route. And they haven't been able to do that. And what's worse is people that have been here for multiple years, like Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore, haven't been able to really help in that capacity at all either. So it's been a slog, and things just get uglier and uglier as the game goes on for this offense. And they have not been able to sustain, consistent offense in second halves very easily. And it's alarming. Like, it's, the Dolphins game, I think they might have got shut out in the second half entirely against the Dolphins, and it wasn't.
And they were buzzing in the first half.
Yeah, and then they just they weren't able to really get anything together. A lot of it falls on the pass catchers. A lot of it falls on their receivers. When the run game's inconsistent, that can tend to be kind of a struggle for them too. Like, they're legitimately struggling to move the ball consistently, and it's so unfamiliar, and it's happening for like
it's felt kind of experimental from afar. Like, it feels like they're like, hey, this week let's try him. It's felt like, like, hey, this week is the Justin Watson 10 target game. Like, okay,
well, and like it's a great, like, I don't know what their identity is yet, and it's December. I think, they've shown the ability to flex their muscles and be, good in the run game, but Andy likes to hold things close to the vest so that the next time that they play the Bills in the playoffs, they haven't seen their entire run scheme.
Right.
They've started to figure in, like, there's normally mile markers for like an Andy Reid. Like, Andy Reid out of a bye is normally, okay, we're going to win the first game out of the bye, the Eagles. They didn't do that. But also it's like, okay, this is when we really start to ramp up some of these younger players and all that stuff. They started to get Rashee Rice involved. So, like, that's been some, there's been some stability there. But, man, outside of, like, it's Kelce, there's getting Rashee Rice involved. And then, like, they just, it's a grab bag week over week.
And how much of this, though, is, so, like, I hear it all the time. When you have good teams and you have had that type of success, you can afford to use the regular season a little bit more for those experimental things and for those, hey, let's find ourselves. Let's find something new that works, right? We don't want to lean just too hard into our fastball. Is some of that what has been going on for KC is just, hey, let's try some new things. We know we're going to be a playoff team. We know we're going to be in position. We have a little bit of time. And obviously now you start to ramp in those, okay, well, now we need to go with what's working in our self-scouting.
So, and this is kind of tying to some of the stuff we've talked about where, like, this team, it looks different than the Super Bowl teams. Is they don't really have that luxury the same way they have in years past, I think, to be as experimental. I think they're trying to find something that works, but it's not an experimental way. It's more like we're running out of time and we need to get it figured out. And so that's, I think, part of the concern, right? Is like, it's not experiments. It's a lot of the same guys making the same mistakes over and over again.
Right.
And so, and not really being able to be productive either. So like, I think that's where the concerns really lie for Chiefs fans is watching. It's not, doesn't seem like, these, and they wouldn't have 4 losses if it was the same version of the Chiefs where it's experimental during the regular season, but they're still going to pull the game out when it's all said and done. So it's different. And that's, I think, why it's concerning.
It's so fun to talk to you like this, though, because like they are the 4th overall passing offense in DVOA. They're the 5th overall DVOA rushing offense. Like Mahomes is top 5 in EPA overall, EPA per play. So it's like, yes, there's these problems that exist, but it's still a good offense. But the thing that is dropped off a little bit, to my surprise, with a returning and a healthy offensive line, I love the way Pacheco runs, is that run. I thought they'd be able to lean on with how good the defense is playing, lean into the run game throughout this period of time. And there's been moments, and obviously they can get it going, but and it can pop at any time, but it just seems like that's been really inconsistent. And that is kind of the oddball to me, is I thought that they would lean more into it and it would be a little bit more efficient.
It's been a week-to-week matchup there, and here's the thing, and this does tie a little bit to what you're talking about with Andy trying to manage for the course of the season. They're a lot better in their gap running than they are running zone, and that's kind of something like when they get into some of their diversity in their gap scheme, like things start moving a little bit, things start looking pretty good. Also, I mean, they've also had some really inconsistent tackle play. Both Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor have had their struggles. Donovan Smith probably has been worse. Juwan Taylor's got more penalties. But they've been very up and down too. And like, I think that's kind of funny too. Is like, there's so up and down for everything there's one game it's good this and bad that. Like there's just no consistency to anything right now.
I feel you. I feel that in my soul. And the last one here before I pass you over to Greg. And the other thing that has dipped, and this is the obvious thing and probably the biggest frustration for you guys, and this was the frustration for the Bills until the Joe Brady transition, is the slump in being 11th in points per game. I think it's 22.3. And like, I always tell people, we have these arguments within Bills Mafia of what points per game really looks like in the NFL. And it's unfair because every time I look up historically, Casey's like at 30 points per game and no one else is. Like, that's crazy. It's hard to do and be at consistently 30 points per game, but to drop down to 22 from that consistency of being in the high 20s, that's a significant drop right now. What's going on with, because we see the drive, there is drive success, there's EPA, same thing that was going on with this Bills offense, right? Like, they're moving the ball. What has happened? What is killing the drive specifically, in your opinion?
Red zone offense and turnovers. So, and sometimes red zone turnovers. It's like, it's just, they've found very inopportune times to turn the ball over, like against the Eagles. Like, we're talking about one or two plays, right? Like, that happens a lot. Travis Kelce fumbling in the red zone against the Eagles. They started that game off against the Packers 0 for 2 in the red zone and went down, I think, 14-6.
I made a comment at one point, like, this game is for like 4 possessions, 2 scoring drives each, and it's 14-6. And all of a sudden, like, what the hell? This is like 2 incredibly similar, situations for each team.
Moving
they
the ball,
converted, they didn't, and all of a sudden, what the hell? It's 14. It's a 2-score game.
Yeah, so it's just been a lot of that, and like, I think it just ties to just themes from out this season. There's just so many inopportune moments where this team makes a big mistake that's very uncharacteristic of what we've seen in the past. And like, yeah, it's funny you talk about some of these underlying metrics, but when you just look at like anecdotally or the moments in which they make some of the mistakes that they make, it just makes it feel a lot worse, right? Like, I think they're one of the best teams at not having a 3 and out, but boy, when they don't need a 3 and out, they've been getting a 3 and out, right? So it's just little inconsistencies in key areas and in key downs. It's been rough. It's been rough to watch relative to what we've had.
Correct. Compare again that line, of where expectation does is it changes everything.
For sure.
So flipping it to the other side of the ball, there should be a lot of excitement for this year. This is the best defense that's been paired with a Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid offense in this stretch. Steve Spagnuolo is like absolutely at the peak of his powers. And now like I don't know that it's all of a sudden significantly better ingredients, but the mix of some of the draft picks coming forward, a few of the value signings kind of, hitting, and then some of the elite talent really coming forward. So we'll touch on a few of those at each of the layers, but let's start at the front end. I love that there's been a little less, like last year, some of the experimentation with Chris Jones of like, oh, he's an edge rusher now, and then kind of figuring it out later. He's very much been more focused here. But if you look at like the individual snaps by game, you can see sometimes where Spags does see that, like, well, we're going to actually put him out here because your tackle is pretty bad. We're going to let him beat that guy up here. How have you seen them use Chris Jones as like the fulcrum of that defense and of that pressure? And is it as consistent as what it looks from afar?
Yeah, so they still move him around a little bit, and it's kind of funny. They kind of saved that for the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. You can talk about saving stuff and holding stuff back. They didn't do it. They tried the full edge rusher experiment, but they didn't move Chris Jones around against the Bengals last time until the AFC Championship game. So the cat's out of the bag on, hey, let's go let Chris play some matchups here and there. So they've just been doing it a little bit more this year. Because it's out of the bag. I think the 4-man rush is still going to run through Chris, and the Chiefs have done a good job of getting high effort, high energy kind of secondary pass rushers that can kind of clean things up for when Chris does get that quick interior pressure. They've got a great stunt, the twists and stunts that they're able to execute with their front has been really good. Chris involved with all that too. It's definitely still running through Chris. They've complemented him so well, both with scheme, and just with the kind of pass rushers that they've kind of got working with him, that I think it's like, it's been fun to watch. I mean, like 4-man rush hasn't been as consistent. That's where Spags comes in, but it definitely up front is still running through Chris.
And it seems like that this year you're seeing some of that step forward from Karlaftis. Maybe not as much. We'll talk about McDuffie in a minute here, but more of a step forward there, and maybe more of that kind of, I'm sure some fans want to see more from FAU and having him kind of step forward, but it's kind of similar to where Karlaftis was building on his rookie season, and now you're seeing more consistent approach there. How is that playing out on expectations versus reality with the younger guy, and maybe using Karlaftis as the reference point of like, hey, like this is what's coming, we just gotta be patient?
So, and weirdly enough, I actually think so. Karlaftis got a lot more snaps early in the year out of necessity last season than Felix Anudike-Uzomah has really been able to kind of get early on in the year. So if you look at like kind of the snap counts, like that's where like George got a lot of reps relative to what Felix has. And then he parlayed that into kind of slowly starting to figure some things out and then running into some sack production. Like I know people, you look at some of, pass rush win rate and, time to the rusher and some of like that kind of stuff. And George, he's not going to, score really high in all those, but high effort, high intensity guy, consistent. Felix, I think it speaks to the depth of this defense that he's not getting opportunities as much because you have Charles Omenihu in the mix now for them. You have Mike Dana and you have George Karlaftis playing at such a high level where like they don't feel uncomfortable having to play Felix, but out of necessity, out of the way the rotation is played, because they have depth on the rotation, they just haven't seen Felix play as much. And maybe there's a little bit of like, maybe he's going to be a little bit more of a project, I think, playing as a 4-eye at K-State as much as he was. And he may be trying to work his body a little bit more. But, I think the hope is he'll be able to, kind of get some more opportunities as the season goes on. He's been playing some limited snaps, but I think what we've seen out of him, he's done some good things.
So I was all set to try to figure out who Jack Cochran is because he was a human I did not know existed. But now seems pretty likely that Bolton's going to be back. So it was full participation. They have not officially designated him yet, but it certainly seems like that's a formality at this point.
It seems like it's trending in the right direction for Nick Bolton, and which is a good thing. Bolton's been good this year.
I wouldn't have hated next week, but that's fine.
I think you're right. I think
Dalton Kincaid could have had 1 week with Jack Cochran. It would have been fine.
Well, if you're worried, if it's look, you should be happy Drew Tranquill's not playing. I'll just say that Drew Tranquill's been the best linebacker on this team, and he's been the best linebacker I think in the last 2 or 3 years on this team.
I gotta interrupt. Hats off to Greg. Greg wanted Tranquill as a fill in rotational guy here, and it couldn't have been a better pickup for you guys, right?
Oh my gosh, he's so good. And Andy gave him the Juju treatment where he was texting him Lombardi, Lombardi pictures like he did with Juju. Like that was the guy he was actively trying to get in. And the Chiefs desperately needed him.
He's a modern linebacker. He's a modern linebacker. He's not Matt Milano, but he's that kind of modern linebacker that can make plays going forward, but also doesn't embarrass himself going backwards. There's just not a ton of them.
Usually it's competitive in the passing.
It's one or the other.
Yeah. And Bolton's a lot more run centric.
Yeah.
And
he's obviously athletic enough to still move in space, but just there's not that many guys that excel in both directions.
And Drew's been incredible this year.
Yeah.
I think he's a big contributor to this team's success on that side of the ball, and losing him's huge.
I was going to say, so long term, when everybody's healthy, who comes off the field out of Gay, Tranquill, and Bolton?
Oh, Willie Gay. And actually, Willie Gay may not even be on the field as much as Willie Gay is losing snaps to Leo Chanel too. Willie Gay.
Yeah, I forgot Chanel is a fourth linebacker. I hate you guys.
Champagne problems. Because Leo's look good too. It's just Willie. They've had to pull Willie off the field multiple times over the last couple of years for whole possessions to just kind of settle him down and let him know what he needs to do the next possession. Like when they're making adjustments, they don't let him on the field for them. They wait a possession and then put him on. So yeah, I think Willie Gay, Leo Chanel will be reduced in roles. Drew Tranquill shouldn't leave the field. I don't know what the Chiefs will ultimately do. They very much value that green dot communication, high communication more than they, ability to challenge in the passing lanes. So, but Drew's been great with the green dot still, don't get me wrong. So that'll be an interesting thing for them. But Bolton, having Bolton back will help for sure. Cause Cochran, but.
So I lied to myself for a long time about how Trent McDuffie, it sucked that you guys traded up ahead and got McDuffie, but he was small and is probably only going to be a nickel long term, and sure he'll be good at that, but his limitations on what he can be. How is he doing what he's doing at 5'11", 185 pounds soaking wet? How is he doing this? I don't understand.
And no arm length.
He's got short arms and he's small and he's kind of thinly framed, his frame's thin. He can't even add that much weight even if you want him to. And how is he doing this?
Real quick to interject on that, for people that don't know, that are listeners, that type of art, that's an anomaly in sports to have that short. It sounds so silly to have that short of an arm length and be a boundary corner with any type of success. He hasn't had the sustained success yet that people measure those things with. But it's a draft anomaly, right?
Mm-hmm. A guy that can play half the slots and half the snaps in the slot, but half the hundreds of snaps outside and be not only okay, but thrive. He's fine. He's fully free. He can play everywhere in the secondary really well.
He still has blind spots when he's a boundary corner for sure. And it manifests its most when he's playing in the boundary. He's really struggled at the catch point. Shocking, right? He's also kind of struggled to track the ball as consistently too. So there's definitely some blind spots with him. If you're going to try to, take a shot downfield, there are, you can get Trent McDuffie, there from time to time, but you're protected a lot more with some of that, with the too high stuff, and teams aren't able to challenge down the field the same way that they've been able to in years prior. But he's been a revelation. I think a lot of the things that people were excited about him as a player they're showing up in such a big way. It's the instincts, the ID, the IQ, outstanding blitzer. And I mean, L'Jarius Sneed's a really good nickel, but Trent McDuffie's taken snaps away from L'Jarius Sneed in the nickel. That has happened. And so he's been really fun to watch. Getting another year in this defense has been huge for that entire young secondary group. That's been part of the reason that they've been so much better, is because there's a joke. This is right after the Super Bowl, there was 2 rookie defensive backs. They were talking and they both said, we didn't even know the defense this year. Wait until this group knows the defense, what they can do. And it's like they finally have a better feel for that. And so Spags has more trust with them, so he can get more, kind of crazy with it. So Trent, I think he's ascended just with his, his play ID, his smarts and some of that kind of stuff. Things are just kind of all his skills taken over.
So one last piece before we get you out of here and get our game prediction. I was going to ask about Brian Cook as the last piece here, and what that looks like or does. Hey, again, the Champagne problems, like Mike Edwards is pretty good as far as depth safeties go. Like that's nice.
That was a guy on my free agent list.
Yeah, that's a guy, like, that's kind of nice when that's what's stepping in. But Cook actually had been coming on nicely. I liked him as a guy that was probably more thought of as a box safety and was showing a little bit better movement than people might have anticipated coming in. How impactful is that? I think, again, the drop off's not enormous to a guy like Edwards, but I think Cook was playing maybe better than people realized.
Yeah, and he was playing, too deep. He was playing deep a lot too. He really wasn't getting as much in the box, surprisingly, which was kind of fun because the Chiefs have, Justin Reid and Brian
it's nice to have that kind of size back there.
It's kind of fun. Yeah, it was fun to see. Cook's a big loss, and it's the communication. I mean, he's taken over in a big way. He's been a high-level communicator back there. He's a smart player, and that's where I think he's going to be pretty missed. Mike Edwards kind of looked lost a little bit last week. In that game against the Packers. If you guys watched the game, the Hail Mary throw that Jordan Love made on 4th and 2, just throwing up a prayer straight into the sky. Mike Edwards had no clue what was going on that play. So communication is going to be a factor, for sure in the back end of that defense. It could really matter, honestly. Like that's a loss that I think people are probably underestimating, but it could be really significant.
Anything else on the injury report here that's a concern as far as missing the game? I know it's
Pacheco,
not like,
how's that?
Yeah, Tranquil. Obviously, it's impossible to predict the concussion protocol piece of it. Cook, I don't think sounds likely, but where are the other ones at?
Well, Wanye Morris is going to start at left tackle for this team this week. It's not going to be Donovan.
I love
Smith.
boys to men. I love
yeah, yeah. It's he's gonna be starting for them. So he was really good in the run game, but like it's a limited sample size. So like, I think that's something Chiefs fans are nervous about. Outside of that,
we liked him a lot in the draft. He was a target for us, but it's still an unknown.
He's playing left again. I mean, he was a right tackle, and at Oklahoma, played left tackle at Tennessee, but like he didn't look good at Tennessee.
No,
playing left. So he's looked great. He stepped in big time. Yeah. But yeah, Pacheco.
If I ran that hard, my shoulders would hurt all the time.
That dude, I mean,
the jokes about
I know,
like his shoes look like they pissed him off. Like he's mad at his shoes.
Mad at the ground.
He's angry at the ground.
I
says
love
something
it.
mean about
really
his mom.
It's
also like it's such an entertaining style of run to watch.
It's something. I mean, it's chaos. It's the most chaotic. It's like he doesn't always know where. Sometimes he looks like a wind-up toy, and like he's just gonna run into the wall. But I mean, like,
but he might run the wall over.
He might run through it.
Yeah, sometimes he knocks the wall over. It's great.
He might run through it, but I mean, like the Chiefs are not healthy coming out. Out of that game, and you're talking about a lot of high-level communication between Drew Tranquil and Brian Cook that they're missing. Throwing Wanye Morris into his first career start against the Buffalo Bills is kind of terrifying. And Isaiah Pacheco is all they have on the ground because Jerick McKinnon, love him, my age, and a lot of times
it has my knee ligaments. Like your age, it has my knee ligaments.
Injury report reads head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Sometimes, like it's
that's me. That's my injury.
They have to manage him. They have to manage his snaps because I mean he's he loses juice late in the year because he's so hurt. So I mean, there's some reasons for concern with this group.
So with that, obviously you've been here before. This is not your first time hanging out with us. Give us a bit of a rundown of how you think this one's going to look, feel, go, and then end it with a score prediction for us.
Okay. I am absolutely terrified of playing the Buffalo Bills this week.
Man, I needed to hear that.
You should. You're still a good team, and you still have the ceiling that as a follower of the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, you have the kind of quarterback that can, that can go blow for blow with him and has gone blow for blow with him. So I think everyone in Buffalo knows the gravity of this game for their playoff chances. I think coming out of the bye and giving Joe Brady a chance to breathe and reassess some things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Chiefs have some holes on the defensive side of the ball that the Bills are uniquely capable of exploiting right now, because they're going to lose some of their coverage players and some of their high-level communication that they've had on the back end. That terrifies me. Also, the offense just hasn't been good, and they haven't been able to find consistent footing. And I don't know if this is going to be the week that there's no magic button this year for this team that there has been maybe where they've been able to really find something. They just haven't found it yet. So I think the Bills
are often hidden in the second half Bills defense.
I was going to say, we made Zach
very often there's a magic button somewhere in the second half of the Bills defense.
We gave Mac Jones a career career game-winning drive, so that we might be the spark.
Catch of the year, a frequent catch of the year candidate thrown out there that happens pretty often.
Normal stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm still majorly concerned, and I think the Chiefs can definitely get this thing righted before the end of the season. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's going to be this week. I think the Bills are coming into Arrowhead and beating the Chiefs. As I sit here on Wednesday,
I thought Greg was going to spit out his water.
Maybe I'll change my tune on
They
Thursday.
have a level of desperation that KC doesn't have to have in this moment. I mean, I would say I desperately hope that's the case, but that is factual. KC,
we need it more.
Been more consistent. There's plenty saying KC should win this game, but there is a level of desperation that they don't have that the Bills absolutely do have. I don't. There's a kitchen sink element that they
and I don't want to be. I don't want to be the team that has to play that this week. And especially with some of the injuries that we've talked about. Rookie left tackle too. It's something that bothers me, so it gives me some concern. So I think the Bills are going to score a lot of points. I think the Chiefs are going to score less points. I think it's going to be 30-24 Bills. I don't pick against the Chiefs very often, but this might
be the first time you've done it on this show.
I think I have before, actually.
Have you?
I've had bad vibes about these games. Yeah. I think I've been wrong every time. So maybe there's
can we convince you to?
Yeah, you've got a reverse jinx thing going. So we're gonna need you to go ahead and pick the Chiefs.
Yeah. I hope they prove me wrong. Yeah. Obviously. Because this is a big game. I think don't underestimate how big of a game this is for the Chiefs.
Sure.
I just think it's a bigger game for the Bills.
Yeah.
Because the Chiefs can bury them. They can flat out kind of. It's going to be really tough to make.
This could end it. Like I said, it's not technically going to end. The mathematical elimination, but for all intents and purposes, another AFC loss. The Bills can go 4-1 if the loss is Dallas, but they need the other ones to be the AFC wins.
They do need AFC, and you can't lose out of the bye.
Just kills them.
Losing out of the bye is such a kick in the ball.
Yeah, plus the just negative momentum that would create coming out of the bye and then losing the first one, where it's all right, any weird thoughts you had of getting hot and running the table here, obviously it's not going to happen. So there's an absolute kitchen sink, all cards on the table. You just got to do whatever it takes element to this game.
I'm going to go throw up now.
Well, hey, I think if you win this game, I think you guys start looking at everything being on the table again.
Yeah.
Everything, for all the reasons we talked about. Everyone in the AFC acknowledges the ceiling of the Buffalo Bills still, and no one knows why they're 6-6. So,
yep.
We appreciate you, man. Let us know what kind of stuff you got coming up for the KC Sports Network.
So I would like to take this opportunity, because I know the Buffalo fans are always very generous. KC, we're doing this thing called Solar KC Raffle, and we raise a ton of money for Operation Breakthrough, which is a organization that takes care of kids in the inner city of KC.
Nice.
Been doing this really cool raffle. We raised $20,000 this year, which was awesome.
That's awesome.
If any Bills fans want to donate to that, by all means, please feel free to. There's a lot of links on our social media.
Make sure you message me that. I'll put it in the show description here. Everybody listening, by the time you listen to this, you'll see it in the show description here. We'll list it. That's awesome.
And I know there's some cheese prizes you can win if you really want them, and you can set them on fire, whatever you want to do with them. But it's just, if you guys want to help some kids in the inner city of KC, like almost, I think pretty much all of the donation, like our foundation, we are very efficient with our giving, like 100%. So that's something we really strive to. So if you want to help some kids across the country, feel free to. So that would be my pitch for today. So, yep.
Very, very cool.
That
We'll be
really cool.
excited to share that.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate
all
it,
the
brother.
stuff you guys do, man. Appreciate you.
I would love to have the chance to talk to you again later this year. We'll see if that happens.
Hey, if what I say happens, there's a very good chance that we will be doing this again.
All right, man.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
All
right. Always fun. One of my favorites every year with Ken. Like I said, it's not always fun to play the Chiefs, but you know, everything that they have built out there at the KC Sports Network is so similar to what, you know, Eric and you and then me and everything we've strived for and tried to do here with Cover One in Buffalo. It's really, really cool to see another independent group like that come up as well as they have. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, they do great things. And if you're playing the Chiefs every year, that means your team's doing pretty good.
You're doing pretty good.
That means you got a first place schedule and you're playing all those good first place teams like the
Just
Chiefs.
a random aside, a lot of fans, like, it's been weirdly fluky that we've played in KC over and over again. Next year is the year that we host the AFC West team of the same ranking.
And we're not going to.
And of course, it's now going to be the Broncos that are going to be second place in the division. And KC's not going to come. We're not going to play them at all, which isn't a terrible thing. Second place schedule would be nice for a year.
In the playoffs. We'll play them in the playoffs.
Yeah, correct. So I would love one more chance to go to KC after this one.
Yes.
So before we get into some of the other fun stuff, we actually have a pretty cool announcement here today that's a little bit different from our friends over at Leftern. So instead of the traditional prints in the same way that they've been every single year, this week's a really, really cool kind of experiment that they've done. So week 14 of season 5 of the Leftern Game Day series is still coming out later this week. But in the meantime, we'd like to shine a light on an apparel collection Leftern dropped with Better Than You. There are 3 pieces printed on premium garments that pay homage to teams and templates of the past: the Buffalo Blizzard soccer team, the Buffalo Braves basketball team, and the Ralph, with a very, very cool silhouette of a random Bills player. I don't know who it could possibly be. And they're only available for pre-order for another day, and there will be no reprints ever again. Grab a piece of history before it's too late. Each purchase comes with a customized holiday gift card to include if you get it for someone and it arrives after Christmas. Support 3 local businesses in one purchase. Really, really cool. I like the most fun part for me is I shared this when Greg and Melissa and the guys over at Leftern initially announced this. And what was so fun for me is the incredibly emotional, immediate reaction went in all 3 directions. Like, I had multiple people being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that Bandit shirt." And then the next person was sharing, "Oh, I need that Blizzard one immediately." And and obviously my heart went to the one for the Ralph. But it was just so cool seeing so many people honing in on one, but it was a different one in each direction. It was really, really cool.
I was actually that years old when I found out there was a professional soccer team that people knew of, because I didn't grow up in Buffalo, so I missed that. But that's cool. I did know about the Buffalo Braves because that's cool. But that one,
anyone who's not aware that the Los Angeles Clippers were the Buffalo Braves, and Bob McAdoo was one of the best players in the NBA while in Buffalo, and they left. And again, I've made fun of me trying to learn hockey. I love basketball. I was watching the Cavs game tonight as the show was going. I really am sad that we didn't get that experience of having an NBA team in Buffalo, but likely we wouldn't have gotten hockey if that had been the case.
Yeah, that'd have been okay. With me and the poor suffering Sabres fans. You guys,
So some people might be cool with taking that trade now.
Well, and here's the thing, too, not to go off on a tangent here. I am also a big basketball fan, and basketball was big in Buffalo then too. It wasn't it wasn't a huge market, so I understand why the NBA moved and obviously went to Los Angeles. But I have always said this, Greg, and I think that it would be cool if they brought the Braves back as a developmental league or G League team or something like that.
I would love
Buffalo
to have
is the type of city that deserves to have Toronto's team or something like that.
I would love to have Toronto or Cleveland's G League team
be
in
out of
Buffalo as a main draw where you could really really get that. I think that Detroit or Cleveland or Toronto or whoever, hell, even the Knicks or the Nets,
Sure.
like wherever, I would love to have one of those, and I think it would draw. I think that you'd get a lot of excitement. That high school basketball is sneaky big in Buffalo and Niagara
Some
Falls.
Of the smaller colleges, Niagara Falls,
there's all the
St. Bonaventure, obviously.
Yeah, there's
has
been
a big following.
runs. There's been
when
a lot
UB's good.
Yeah, but there's been moments.
Yeah.
What didn't they? And the UB team, didn't they win the Ice Cube Big 3 tournament?
Maybe.
I think the team that won it, the $1 million, the big.
We're from UB. Oh, I know what you're saying there. Yeah,
it was UB alums that won. It was guys who played for UB.
That's cool.
That won the $1 million prize in the big basketball tournament.
Yeah, Buffalo needs some basketball. Let's get on that, Buffalo. Come on.
That's random aside.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do some fresh looks, though. Because
I was going to say, so what do we need
to
see as the fresh design? I think that, Kent certainly touched on mine, and you've brought it up before. What do you expect to see? Joe Brady got 2 weeks. We saw some exciting, legitimate things. What do you want to see / expect to see? And you can, if there's a differentiation, that's okay. Between those two pieces here coming out of the bye, what do you think he honed in on? Want to see more of? Want to continue to lean into? What are you thinking in that space of how big this bye week was, of him catching his breath as a first-time Bills play caller here?
Well, it's going to be interesting because obviously it looks like Dawson Knox is trending towards coming back in the next handful of weeks. And I know there's a lot of haters of Dawson Knox and his contract out there, but
I'd tell you to go look at Quentin Morris's snap count. Not much has changed. We're still playing 2 tight ends an awful lot.
Correct. And he's going to be part of it. And he's going to be,
and he's an improvement from Quentin Morris.
Yes. And he's a plus player. And but what I'm interested in is to see how he toes that line, because he isn't Quentin Morris. So there is also reason to play him maybe even a little bit more than they have been playing Quentin Morris. I think the coaching staff views him differently than the player or than the fans do. And I think he's probably right now a more consistent plus player than Gabe Davis is in the passing game when healthy. And so I also can see reasons to have him.
Plus a legitimately good blocker, a legitimately, he's not Lee Smith, but he's a legitimately plus blocker
for sure. And so that, not necessarily right now this week, but that's in the back of my mind of what did they do in the bye of saying, how are we going to work in some more of that as we go forward? But to answer your question more specifically right now coming out, it's the involvement of James Cook and the running backs and even Ty Johnson really over the last couple of weeks. Like, how do we get that type of speed out of the backfield involved? Because that's what's going to help Josh.
Who knew that signing Leonard Fournette was all we needed to really spark the inspiration that Ty Johnson needed to be able to show his true potential?
And also in the option routes video that Eric did in the film room feature, I don't know if anyone's gotten a chance to watch that. Really good. And he was trying to highlight more specifically the philosophies, but I wrote him immediately and was like, the only thing I got out of that video was like Khalil Shakir is even more awesome than I have been saying, like in the way that he's running those option routes and the decision making he's making. And I think that in that self scouting, Brady's going to see like, wow, we've been able to get Shakir the ball and he's doing good, but there's more meat on the bone for involving him with Kincaid in this offense.
So I was going to wait and see if you went that path. Khalil Shakir, I think, is a piece of unlocking where this can go, to the point where I think fans are coming to realize it, and I think there's no better example than Miami. If you look, that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both play like 65 to 75% of the snaps. Like, they don't play all the time. When you do a lot of pre-snap motion, you can't continue to run like that all the time over and over and over again. It's not soccer. Like, you can't just continuously run all the time. I'm okay if we see a little more Dawson Knox than we did Quentin Morris. Obviously, I want Dalton Kincaid and Stefon Diggs on the field as much as humanly possible, but they're also not 100% snap count. Kincaid's close. And I'm okay if we see more of an even split between Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakir. Like, I don't think that needs to be a tier anymore. I think it needs to be Stefon Diggs here, Dalton Kincaid right with him as the top two. And then if you told me it was like a completely equal pie with 3 slices between Dawson Knox, Khalil Shakir, and Gabe Davis, of who the other third main person was on the field,
sure,
I'd be okay with that. Like I that'd be perfectly fine with me that they are an even split of what's there. I don't know that it matters who the other guy is. We haven't seen much out of Trent Sherfield. We haven't seen much out of Deontay Hardy or Andy Isabella. I don't think there is another surprise weapon here. I think it's probably Reggie Gilliam and Quentin Morris contributing as much as anybody.
in the ways they do, yeah.
Well,
especially when you add in those running backs, right, to take up the remaining share.
Yeah, so it's going to be a ton of Diggs and Kincaid, and then just as much as possible, it's going to be 2 out of those 3 of Davis, Shakir, and Knox on the field at any given combination, along with the other 2. And I think it's just going to be those 5 riding forward. And if it's equal between those 3, I'm okay. And honestly, if Shakir gets slightly more than Davis and Knox, I won't be upset.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Like, again, Gabe Davis is still better than a lot of the detractors want to say. So these are good problems, right? Knox is also that same way. But Shakir, to me, why I would lean, even maybe I'm too high on him, but it's the versatility he offers. He's a plus blocker. He's doing the option route, Beasley,
which wasn't
the
case last year. Like his improvement in blocking has been significant. Definitely. It was a reason that he couldn't get on the field last year, is he was like completely blowing. Totally. Like not even being a neutral, or like, like they joke about Dalton Kincaid isn't a good blocker, but he moves his feet and he gets in the way. Like that's all you really need. You don't have to be a road grader. Travis Kelce isn't a great blocker, but he moves his feet and gets in the way.
For sure. Like, and willingness, the willingness to do it is real.
Yeah. Shakir, it wasn't unwilling. He was just making horrendous mistakes. And like his guy was the one blowing up plays behind the screen because he wasn't even in the right position to get in the way. He was letting his guy blow it up. And this year, again, not that he's like some road grader, but he's now in the right position and moving his feet. That's all we need. Just get in position to move your feet.
And we just heard Ken talk about it in that Kansas City offense. The Bills offense is the same way in terms of young pass catchers coming in and learning how they run those option routes that we saw the confusion on between Gabe and Josh. And in that video, again, if you haven't watched it, go watch Eric's video. He shows a number of times where Gabe's making the right answer and doing the right read in this offense. And last year, you didn't see a lot of that. Also, he wasn't having a full grasp of the offense. He was running some routes into other people, and you can't do that and stay on the field. And so he's checked all those boxes for this can be a guy that the coaches trust to go out and do his job. Plus he provides those sparks and yak plays and explosive plays, which is what this Bills offense needs to get going. He's really proven, outside of the few random ones that go to James Cook, to be the guy that you're getting explosives from. Fresh look though, I want to flip to you now, is on this defensive side of the ball, right? This fell apart in multiple big games and multiple big spots. This is probably the thing that I thought about the most in the bye week and was probably talked about and dissected the most this bye week was what self-scouting is Sean McDermott going to do? Because it doesn't feel like they've been able to fully. Bernard's been playing well. Dotson's been playing above his expectation. But there's something about the presence of not having Matt Milano and Daquan Jones in some of those spots that they haven't been able to find the right answers and pull those right levers, as Joe Marino likes to say. Are they going to get those levers worked out here over the bye week? Is Sean McDermott the guy we think he is with the defensive mind we think he is? Or are they just going to keep doing the same stuff here?
So the part that frustrates me is, like, even just the Philadelphia game, just going back to the Philadelphia game, I don't think the personnel is going to change dramatically from that game to this game.
Sure.
If we make the playoffs, could Daquan Jones come back? Sure. But I don't think the personnel is going to change whether we get into the playoffs or not. We got the guys we're going to have. That's it. Like, this is who we're going to have, and we got to make it work. So I don't mind Rasul Douglas getting another, like a full stretch of like really understanding everything. We don't know how much they may or may not have been holding back, from being able to call. That's valuable. The thing that bugs me is we've seen a really impactful defensive line and pass rush that dominated the first half against the Eagles. That was with a fantastic offensive line that we were dominating that first half. So how much of that is adjustments? How much of that is, are we leaning too much on the same guys to play snaps instead of as much of a rotation as we've done before? We've seen, the AJ Epinesa getting oxygen on the sideline. And we've seen, weird amounts of snaps from some guys here. I don't know. I don't know how much of that is like, hey, you gotta have an adjustment to the counter that the other team's making at halftime. I don't know how much of that was Sirianni and Johnson changing things coming out, and we weren't prepared for it, because the whole idea of having rotational guys and everything was that we're supposed to be fresh down the stretch and in the end. Now, is that different when it's, Kingsley Jonathan, and guys, obviously we've seen some of the, we haven't seen contributions from Poona Ford. We've seen Leonard Floyd be really, really impactful, but sometimes playing a lot of snaps is hard. Like, he is 31. Like, he can't play a bajillion snaps. He's really, really good when it's in the 50% snap range.
Tim Settle's done.
Yeah, Tim Settle. I don't even understand why he's playing over Poona Ford. I like that. It makes me crazy. Linval Joseph is just a run.
He's doing his job.
He's doing what he's supposed to do,
sure.
But that's all he's supposed to do. And we've even had games where we've probably asked him to play a few too many snaps, more than we should. So I don't know, because we've seen such flashes of genuinely dominant play. That first half against the Eagles, they destroyed them. Like, they were dominant in that situation. Like, we held them to 7 points. It was, it should have been 30-7, but it was, instead it was 17-7 to the whole deal. We were better than them for that stretch. And then we let them score 30 in the second half in overtime. And I just don't know how it flipped so dramatically. And we've seen enough of those down the stretch here, where these second half slides where we have things within reach and under control, and then we lose it. I just don't know exactly what that answer is supposed to be. And I think it's getting to the point now where I don't think I can depend on it, and I can't expect it. I have to expect that, hey, we're going to keep letting up points. We just have to keep scoring, and we have to stay ahead of them. We can't have. So my answer in the Eagles game wasn't, oh, we should have found a way to stop them from scoring 37. It's that, hey, the 2 missed field goals and the drop Cook touchdown, we should have had 50 and it shouldn't have mattered. That's what it's going to take. We're going to have to outscore teams, and we can't give up those easy offensive opportunities, because I think against good teams, we're going to give up 30. It's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, and here is the thing, though, like, a lot of teams are against these good teams, right? That's the way the league goes. Good offenses are going to put up points against good teams. They're going to find a way to do it. Yeah. I do think some of it comes down to some weird complementary football situations where it's like, yeah, the offense did technically get the final score to go up, but they also put your defense in some positions where you're putting a bad depleted defense in a bad spot.
Yeah, missed field goals, give the ball near midfield.
Yeah, could turn the ball over in your plus territory a number of times. Against the Patriots, right? It's coming out after a score, giving a turnover. So you put your defense in some bad spots in different times in games that made them closer, where one play makes all the difference. But for me, I think an important thing you said was this line maybe get worn out late in games. What I'm looking to stop some of the things that frustrated me, like the additional call for a blitz in that Broncos game after doing it back-to-back times, when I don't think you needed to, but I understand what McDermott's saying. If you're going
There's
down,
a level of desperation where what else do you want me to do?
I need to generate some pressure here. I'm not getting it with 4. We want to keep him out of field goal range. Russell Wilson's been cutting up and running it. We want to create some confusion and havoc. You can't feel like you do that with 4. And so the fresh look of the week I want to see is, outside of what's going on with Von Miller off the field, which is a problem, and that could bleed into some of his availability going forward, but also his lack of ability so far to recover from the injury. Obviously, we're still at a year, so I'm not on the field. Yeah, I'm not totally necessarily panicked on that side of it, but it hasn't been good enough, and no one has stepped up. One of my biggest frustrations is you've had good play out of a bunch of people, but nobody stepped up to be that closer in that situation. And Greg Rousseau's been close to like popping over the edge of just like, he's really high end good and he does his job and he's a good run blocker, a good run defender, but he's not really like that that dude, right? And he's close. AJ Epinesa has popped a few times. He could be close to doing that, but nobody's taken that. I'm not saying to be Von Miller, but to be the guy in that fourth quarter, late in a game where Sean McDermott can trust that we're going to get there with 4. We got a closer that's going to be able to get there with 4, and we don't have to throw a cover 0 blitz in a big situation in an act of desperation to go down swinging. That's what I want to see, where they can play true to their philosophy of, hey, we want to bring 4 and drop a bunch of people and try to create turnovers or keep it in front of us so they can't score in those situations.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. We still need situational stops. We still need to be able to make some key plays in the moment. Again, maybe I'm just resigning my fact to, or being, pessimistic about it. I've just kind of resigned myself to the fact that, hey, if we're going to win these next 3 games against KC, Dallas and San Diego and Los Angeles Chargers, all 3 games are going to be 60+ point games, because that's what it's going to take. Like, I just kind of have resigned myself to the fact, if we win on Sunday, it's going to be, here, I'll spoil it. It's going to be like 38-33. Like, it's just going to be that kind of game where, hey, we do now. 33 is a weird number, and I have it there because, hey, we stop them 4 times for field goal attempts instead of touchdowns. And then it's going to take that kind of situation, because that's the best. That is the stop that we're going to need in these moments, because we've just seen too much of good offenses find a way against this level of depleted defense. And until we get all those guys back, it's just not going to be the same thing. And we just have to outscore teams.
Yeah. But in those, I agree with you that the offense is going to have to put up some points here through this stretch, especially against Dallas. But like, that's a great example of a game where you get into some of these games, this defense is going to have to learn how to adjust without those guys and not necessarily taking the big swings to get a stop at some point. If you want this run to be special, that's been some of the hang up here, especially recently, where you could have gotten yourself out to a little bit of a lead coming out of the bye. Now you're really buried and you're back against the wall because the defense wasn't able to get those stops in those close games, in those perceived shootouts against Philly. You're not able to get the stop when your defense needs to. They've got to find a way in those late game situations. And that's what I'm hoping that they in the self-scouting on the defensive side, they saw some stuff in that late game situational where either teams are picking up on the tendency. We've heard multiple times people saying, hey, we knew the Bills were going to be doing this in this type of situation late in the game. You got to self-scout and get rid of some of that stuff that's not working. And so I'm hoping they do it. Sean McDermott has been pretty good at it in the past.
Steve brings up a good point here about when we talked earlier about what they've leaned on
with
the
it more
rotation.
than him, right?
Yeah, not having Gregory Rousseau at 100% has probably been more of an impact than people realize, and hopefully this bye really gives him that chance to
I agree with that.
Any other fresh designs for our friends at Leftern?
No, get them off the screen. I love you guys. Merry Christmas.
Screw those guys.
Yeah.
All right. We do enjoy working with them. It's been fantastic. We will be sharing that later on this week when the new game day series comes out. But that the merch that they got out there and the clothing line has been really, really cool. And I wasn't familiar with the folks at Better Than You, but they are duly accurately labeled, because that's some awesome designs.
Yeah. So your prediction was
38-33.
38-33. Man, that's a lot of points.
Yep.
You're not
71.
wrong. Yeah,
71 points, and I think we score a game-winning touchdown. As I think we have to come back. I think we'll be down 33-31 and have to score to win it, and that we're going to have the aggression to go for the touchdown and not go for a field goal, because the field goal won't be enough.
That sounds terrible for my health.
Oh yeah, it's going to be
a horrible Sunday.
Terrible.
That's not great. I have it also as a close game. I'm a little bit closer to Kent's though. I am at Bills 27, KC 24. I think it's not an explosion of offense, because I think obviously the Bills offense has gotten a lot of things right, but there's still some stuff to work out in what they're doing. They're not totally exploding. They did against Philly, but I don't know that that's going to carry over. It's the Steve Spagnuolo defense playing a little bit of a different level this year. And KC, I think, is still going to struggle to find themselves a little bit in this game. The only thing that really worries me is the Bills' lack of tackling, especially at the second level with all that. If they get loose in some of the screens, things like that, Pacheco gets going into that second level, that could get a little hairy for them. but it seems pretty predictable that some of that stuff's coming. You can play up front, and if you come up and tackle, you can make some plays. And with guys like Rasul Douglas and Taron Johnson being able to read some of that stuff, that gives me pause to know that I think we can get them behind the sticks and limit some of their scoring. But still, I think they get over 20. I think this is a game where we get a little bit more confidence back in Tyler Bass. Maybe a few big field goals from him to buffer that lead a little bit. I think he needs it. I think we need, if this run's going to be special, we're going to need him to quit the wonky misses. And when we have opportunities to get points on the board against some of these teams, you got to take it, right? And so I'm hoping for that. Another clean game for Josh. It doesn't need to be great, but just a clean performance from Josh. And like we said earlier, just getting Kincaid and Diggs, obviously that is where the offense is running through, but who is going to be that third guy? And I'm over with the Hardy experiment. I'm over with the Sherfield experiment. Make it one of those type of three. Obviously, Knox won't be there this week, but Gabe or Khalil Shakir, and really get them the ball and get them involved on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Doesn't look like weather is going to be an issue. I'm seeing like 44 and mostly sunny. I think it's going to be relatively nice football weather, chilly, but still very, very nice. That won't be a factor. So I expect to see lots of points, lots and lots of points.
Love to see that.
I know I purposely put you on the spot earlier just to be a jerk. Obviously we didn't talk about Von Miller today. I don't think there's a lot to talk about because we don't know a lot about the situation. Lots of people have brought up their handling of the Matareza scenario. Lots of people, no matter what decision they make, I think there would be people who feel really strongly about it either way. If they had him away from the team, or I mean, even crazier, like released him already, you would have people losing their minds about due process and not letting it play out and innocent until proven guilty. Not doing that, you have a lot of people who have very strong feelings about, believing, victims and wanting to take a serious stance and talking about all the process and the right kind of people and all that ringing hollow with those kind of things. I think they're in a no-win situation. I had put it out earlier that my preference would have been more of a paid leave kind of situation. I don't think you can release him. I do think they learned somewhat from that Areza situation, that waiting for it to play out and reacting to the initial horrific allegations of that scenario. Again, the allegations ended up being true, but to different perpetrators. He wasn't the person that seemed to have perpetrated those horrible acts. This situation, there's 120 million differences between those two situations. It's naive not to see the money as a factor. But again, it's impossible to know what to do. I'm a little surprised that the answer is he's going to practice tomorrow and they're going to move along as if nothing happened. I think that is a viable option. That is one of the let the process played out. I'm just a little surprised that that's the answer they went with.
Yeah, this is a tough situation for me. I've been not meditating on it all, but just thinking about what are my thoughts on it. And one thing, I think it's okay to not have thoughts on something immediately and wait. I know that I personally have gotten burnt in the past of trying to come up with a thought and trying to think of what is the right thing to do in these situations. And they're big situations and they involve contracts and they involve money and they involve messy situations. I know I put out a tweet about a personal experience with something similar but different, right? They're all different. And it's also okay to say we don't know. And I think that's where I'm at with this situation is I hate the accusations. I absolutely hate it. And if they are true, I don't want him being associated to the city and the team. And a lot of what he talks about and who he shows us he is fraudulent. And I'm not about that.
What he says doesn't always match what he does.
Yeah. And so I agree with people that are frustrated and don't want anything part of this, but I do know that I don't know what really is going on. And I want to wait and trust what the investigators are doing. I believe in investigative police work. I believe that the DA in Texas is taking this seriously and that they are trying to come to a conclusion. And if they charge, then I believe that shows they have enough evidence that something really serious happened here. And in this situation, it's different than some of the states we hear about big names where they come in and they just do a settlement out of court. Because this wasn't a 911 call initiated and he was arrested, the DA now has this and is going to go through this in a thorough manner and investigate it and see if it's worthy of charging, whether or not she wants to or not. And so
Texas is one of multiple states that has a provision where, because so many victims are either threatened or financially coerced to drop charges, they remove that option, and the evidence is what the DA decides based on the evidence, not whether the initial party wants to drop charges or not. It's up to the DA. And again, that's more so to protect victims from themselves, because unfortunately they had multiple scenarios where someone who dropped charges because of a threat was later injured more severely or killed because of those scenarios. So that the law in Texas is actually named after a woman. I apologize, I don't remember the name. That is exactly what happened. She was threatened to drop charges. She did, and then that person killed her.
Yeah, and that is the way the law. I agree that this is how the law should be. Where if a 911 call is initiated and somebody's arrested, then we should look into that, right? Like we
should take that seriously and find out.
Absolutely, I'm on board with all of that. I'm going to trust in that process. I know some people say that's naive, but in terms of the Bills, I did not get the reaction that I saw on Twitter necessarily when I listened to Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane today. These situations it's almost impossible. There's going to be a section of the fan base either way that doesn't like what's being said. You have a bunch of reporters just sitting there sort of trying to pry a story more than the truth. Because if they wanted the truth, they'd investigate the investigation. They wouldn't just pry for a story and a narrative. And there's no good way to answer it. People are going to say they got burned and they look like idiots. Every one of us would, and a lot of people would look like idiots trying to fumble something like this publicly. And so there's not a great way to do it. I would be up for something like you said. I do think there's, even outside of whether Vaughn did do it or not, I do think that there's enough conduct detrimental to the team in terms of the public view of it, where you could do some sort of like, hey, we're just going to give you treatments and you can work off to the side or something like that. But we're not going to make you part of this team as much as we can until we figure out this, or talk to the DA and figure out how long this is going to go. But these are really tough, delicate situations with lots of contracts, lots of lawyers, lots of legal teams. It's not, I think some people think that like just Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane sat around and listened to Vaughn tell them, hey, I didn't do it. I can promise you that's not the case. The Bills lawyers are for sure involved in how they're handling this. The PR department, I'm pretty positive the league has investigators and investigating this and in communication with the Bills. So we don't know what information they do or don't have in making these decisions, but I do think it's more thorough than people give them credit for. There's not a lot you can do and your hands are tied until the courts work it out.
Yeah. So obviously we will treat it accordingly. I made comments on what would happen if he is found, if there is anything enough to where the league suspends him. The Bills have financial ramifications. If he's put on the commissioner's exempt list, that does not change anything financially, but it takes him off the 53-man roster. Or if charges, we've seen for most cases, if charges are dropped, that kind of drops it with the league. However, both Ezekiel Elliott and Ben Roethlisberger were suspended for situations that involved either charges not being brought or being dropped. So the league is sadly kind of inconsistent with this, and it's impossible to predict what will or won't happen. So we will simply react to what we know as we find it out.
That's probably the most frustrating thing about this is anytime these situations come up, I do have a bit of a hard time with where I stand with my relationship with the NFL, because they are inconsistent and the teams are, I like the Bills. I'm still going to go and root for the rest of that Bills team this Sunday, but the league is very inconsistent with how they handle things, and talent matters and money matters. And it's the disgusting side of business in the world that we operate in shows itself in these situations with the NFL.
Yeah. So again, I thought it was appropriate to at least comment on some pieces of that, but Aaron and I will continue to focus on the football side of things. And as information comes available, we'll go that direction. Before we head out and get on with the rest of our week, as we get here for holiday time, we've had a lot of people ask, for different gift ideas. And one that I think is really helpful, if you have a fan in your life that enjoys talking about the Bills, and you'd like them to talk to somebody else instead of you. Maybe you're tired of them talking to you about the Bills, like Aaron and I's wife, and why they enjoy our show so much is because we come talk to each other. Send them our way and help them join up with Cover One. Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One OnePass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Any final thoughts here? I love your message down below there. You showed me a fantastic Christmas hat before the show as you're getting ready for holiday parties and heading back to be with your family. This is your favorite time of year.
It is my favorite time of year. And yeah, I am full knee deep in Christmas movies. I was a little.
We watched Candy Cane Lane tonight before the show.
I have not seen that
Eddie
one yet.
Murphy one.
Any good? Cute?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, honestly, like at the end, we were all like, "Oh, that was pretty good."
Yeah, Netflix hasn't been great.
I don't know that it's like something we're gonna. Oh, we have to make sure. I loved 8-Bit Christmas is one of my favorite newer ones. That's come out of the new ones.
A Boy Called Christmas was all right.
Yeah, Klaus absolutely is up at the top of the list. Christmas Chronicles is really up at the top of the list of newer ones.
Yeah,
I think 8-Bit Christmas is maybe not on equal with Klaus, but is up there as one I will rewatch every single year. Candy Cane Lane was a good watch. I totally recommend it. I don't know that it's one like, oh, hey, we have to make sure to watch that one again this year.
Yeah, I will say I was a little bit mad at you that during the Christmas season, you still made a point to watch Die Hard, even though you don't believe it's a Christmas movie. You wasted time when you could have been watching our actual Christmas movie.
Yeah. I need to like carve out a time where I go and watch like Gladiator and Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and like my favorite action movies.
Sure.
For some reason, it just comes like this is just the cycle I go through when I rewatch.
I feel guilty when I'm not watching Christmas movies this time of year because it's like I could be watching a Christmas movie.
Chris wanted to help clarify that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Again, I don't care. Like whatever you want to label something, like I think everyone knows that Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie. Everyone knows that it's a summer blockbuster action movie, but there's enough little pieces sprinkled in that it gives people the fun of like, well, technically I can make a case and argue with you because of this. So they just have fun doing that, but none of them actually believe it. No one actually thinks that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Yeah. People just like arguing, and it's a fun thing. Like Rocky IV, the robot comes out with a Christmas hat on. Rocky IV is an action movie. Yeah. In the initial scene when Rambo is getting brought back in, it's Christmas and there's Christmas decorations around. So Rambo is a thing. You could have Die Hard with the exact same scenario where he's invited back for a 4th of July party and he's whistling John Philip Sousa and he sends down the killed guy and it says, I have a machine gun now. God bless America. And it's the exact same plot and zero changes about the movie with the 4th of July party. It has nothing to do with Christmas. That was just the excuse of what they needed for the building to be empty to do the robbery. Well, guess what? No one works on the 4th of July either. They could have robbed the building on the 4th of July and zero changes about the plot.
Yes, you just also made a very good argument for Home Alone not being a Christmas movie as well. But
so unfortunately, the slippery slope comes up of like, all right, well, you know, if you look at It's a Wonderful Life, like how much of that is actually about Christmas and how much of that is about someone
that's the Christmas spirit. And that's I will. We can have a separate podcast about this, but the people that
Christmas ranking movie,
what makes a Christmas movie a Christmas movie? But what's funny to me is the people that will say Christmas or Die Hard is a Christmas movie. People think that I take contrarian stances for the sake of taking contrarian stances, but the people that say Die Hard is a Christmas movie are the quintessential contrarians who are just they don't actually believe it and are just trying to muddle an argument out of you. But anyways, get these people out of here, man.
Yeah. So anyone who is, if you're still listening right now, one, what's wrong with you? But thank you. So on your way out, if you're still one of the absolute sickos that's still listening right now, press the like button. Help us out. We really, really appreciate it. It goes a long ways for it. But on behalf of our producer, Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You, for some reason, have still been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.